The Residential Tenancies Board is an independent public body that is responsible for publishing reliable data on Ireland's rental sector. Our quarterly directors' updates help landlords, tenants and policymakers to understand current trends in Ireland's rental market. As the custodian of Ireland's National Register of Tenancies, we have the most complete set of data and view of the rental sector. Today, we publish two data sets that draw on our registered data. The first is the profile of the registered data series for Q2 2025. This tells us about the size of Ireland's rental sector. The second is the RTB ESRI Rent Index for Q1 2025. This provides the most accurate picture of average rents paid for new and existing private tenancies in Ireland. We also released important updates from RTB administrative data sets for Q2 2025 that included data on notices of termination, data on dispute resolution applications, and updates on RTB compliance and enforcement actions to uphold rental law. I will now hand you over to the RTB Senior Research and Policy Manager, Brian Gallwey, who will take us through some of the key highlights from this data.
Thanks, Rosemary. Let's start with the RTB ESRI Rent Index for Q1 2025. It shows that nationally average rents continue to rise for new and existing tenancies. The standardised average rent for new tenancies was up by 5.5% annually to €1,696, while existing tenancies rents were up by 4.4% to €1,452. The rate of new tenancy rent increases has been relatively stable for the last 4 quarters at a national level. However, the trends vary significantly across the regions. Dublin saw its lowest growth rate for new tenancies since mid-2022 at 3.3%. But outside of Dublin, we saw 8 counties where new tenancy rent increased by more than 10%. 5 of these counties, Donegal, Kerry, Laois, Monaghan and Tipperary, have seen sustained high levels of rent increases for 8 quarters now. It's important to note that this data is from Q1 2025 and predates the national extension of rent pressure zones to these counties. However, the RTB is planning additional education activities in the new RPZ areas. Next, let's look at the profile of the registered data for Q2 2025. It shows that the number of registered private tenancies grew by 3.2% annually to 240,798, but remained relatively static quarter on quarter. The data also shows how the shape of our rental sector continues to evolve. The proportion of tenancies provided by landlords with 100+ tenancies has now increased for 8 consecutive quarters. It now stands at 13.94%, up from 11.79% 1 year ago. Approved housing body tenancies continued to see double-digit growth, rising by 11.7% annually to 52,989 at the end of Q2 2025.
Now let's take a look at the RTB's administrative data released today. The RTB received 4,728 notices of termination in Q2 2025. This is an increase of 17.2% compared with Q2 2024. 57% were issued as the landlord intends to sell the property. Dispute applications remain stable, but at a high level, with 2,634 applications received in Q2 2025. That's up 1.5% annually. Finally, let's look at RTB compliance and enforcement updates. The RTB issued 3,357 compliance notices for failure to register in Q1 and Q2 2025 under its criminal registration enforcement process. Nearly 1,400 tenancies have registered as a result to date. The RTB also approved 249 new investigations under its investigation and sanction civil process in Q1 and Q2 2025. This is an increase of 100% on 124 investigations commenced throughout 2024. This was possible thanks to new data sources that helped us to identify potential non-compliance at scale last year. Thank you for watching. If you'd like more detail on today's update, please visit rtb.ie for more information.